And then, of course, we now have author Julie Rowe. Hi, Julie.
Hi, Kate.
Hi there. And what's fun about having her here, she's in studio today. And also, she's written several books. Do you want to talk about the two and then the one coming?
Okay.
Yeah.
It's so great to be here.
Thank you. I'm glad you are here.
It's exciting. So the first book came out May of 2014 called A Greater Tomorrow. Second one, The Time Is Now, came out first week of November of 14. And I have my third book coming out, which is called From Tragedy to Destiny. It serves a different purpose. They're all in regards to a near-death experience I had in September of 2004, and some of the experiences I've since had that follow up with that, I guess, on some of the things that I experienced during that visit to the spirit world, as well as things that I guess, for lack of a better word, was shown are coming to America.
Right. Okay, since this entire show has been, most of it has been about Lavoy Finicum and what's going on there. And because I've had the Bundys on the show, we've talked extensively about this issue. Do you want to weigh in at all on that or no? I mean, it's up to you. It's up to you if you want to weigh in at all.
Give me a minute on that. Let me see how I can. I do feel it is not a shock to me what's occurred. Anyone who's familiar with my story will understand why I say that. The claims that I make about my experience are not simple claims, and so if I am truthfully speaking, then it would stand to reason that I would perhaps be shown some of what occurred and has been occurring or will occur in the Oregon situation. It's more of a type and shadow, a litmus test, testing of the American public
to see
of more
how
of
they'll
what's
react.
coming.
I know. I've
felt
that way too.
And stuff.
And because as you looked back in your experience, you looked back into history, and it was interesting in her books how she goes through some points in history that have been misguided since, and the founding fathers and how they've been misrepresented. That was in your book, and how Christopher Columbus has been misrepresented. And so there is a history of an agenda of lying, of trying to
revisionist history for a long time.
Yes, and so it's often interesting to me that people still in this day and age give the benefit of the doubt to the government at all times, and where people have to prove their innocence and prove themselves when we understand that this has been a long history. I mean, in your experience, you've seen this long history of lying to their own people to obtain control over them, and maybe even what's coming in the future for us.
Right.
So it's probably no shock, I would imagine.
It's nothing new. You know,
I have a question. Do you think that this desire to trust the government, even though we know better, is sort of a paternal instinct that we have, and instead of, and it's caused by godlessness?
Okay, well, I can't speak for anyone other than myself, but I know for me, I don't like to ever think ill of anyone, any individual, any organization. I don't like to think ill. I like to think positive thoughts. I like to think happy thoughts.
Sure.
I like to think loving thoughts. I don't like to think about the darkness and the wickedness that has been on the earth or will be.
Right.
And so we keep to try to focus on positive things. So there's a combination that I go through, that feeling of, okay, I want to look at things as they really are and not put my head in the sand, but not be negative.
Right.
And not get distracted by the things that don't really matter, So I don't know how it is for, I think that's we can't generalize it because there's so many different reasons and so many things that go into it, not just here in mortality, but in the other realms that we don't see and experience, most of us. And so I can't judge why somebody does or doesn't do what they do. I do know the Lord has a plan for us and that we have our agency, and we did premortally and we always will. It's an eternal thing. And these are things that God's light years ahead. And so he's planned even for these awful orchestrations.
Letting them happen.
Yes. His grand orchestration is amazing. And more and more, the more public I go with this story and my experience, and the more opposition we experience, whether that's on a personal, family, community, national or international level, globally speaking, wherever we are, it is what it is. And there are so many factors involved in that. And for me and my family, I know what I know because often that opposition comes and it's awful going through it. But when you break through to that next level of understanding on your journey, then there's clarity that comes because the light comes in and blasts out the darkness. So I have great hope for America. That's what this third book is about, From Tragedy to Destiny. It talks about some of the tragedy of my story related to my health and how I ended up in the circumstance I'm in now, and really then talks about the tragedy of the United States and what's happened there and is happening and will happen, and then on a global scale of the world. But ultimately what the Lord's design is for the tragedy that's happening in America, for us to push through those labor pains to become the nation, the land, and the world that we've been designed to become.
Sure.
There's no end of the world, guys. I love the media, by the way. So we can't, this media.
Yeah, I know.
I love all media. I keep being reminded that, people keep telling me, all publicity is good publicity. And I'm like, actually, I would like to thank everyone who has done stories, whether they've been true or not, because I've had a lot of people message me saying, because of the hit pieces that some of the media did on you and things that have been going on in the social media that aren't true and the lies and stuff, people are being exposed to the message who otherwise never would have heard it. They would have never taken interest or anything. And so there's a higher purpose even in that. And I'm grateful for that. And so that's what I signed up for. That's what we signed up for. It
always fascinates me because there's many NDE experiences, near-death experiences that have been published. Why do you think the hit pieces? Why the negativity?
Why did they care?
I don't see so many NDEs being people just. Almost...
Are you trying to say some people are hating on me?
Yeah. What is the deal with that?
Well, I've got to say there's a full spectrum there, right? I've got as many haters as maybe some that are true friends and valiant friends, and I'm grateful for that. No differently than what we experienced before we came to Earth. It's a battle, and it's real. And why would anybody care to discredit anybody, especially a middle-aged mom who lives in the Midwest? Why do they care?
I don't know.
So I must
you can
be
read
pretty
it or not read
right?
it. Yeah.
Anybody who's met me knows I'm so threatening. No, it's the message, and we're just representatives of that message. And people need to be able to get the clarity and the discernment and the understanding. And the only way that can happen is through that adversity and being able to listen with their heart as to what is resonating and what the truth is, to cut through all of the filters and the blinds and the blinders.
What's interesting is that in your books, you talked about plagues coming and things that we would be going through. And some of the things that are just, I think we all in our gut kind of understand or know on some level that these things are going to happen. And I just had Robert Steele on, ex-CIA, and I said, what does this next year, the future hold if you're going to play this chess game? And he said, well, definitely a plague. He said, our economy is going to go south. And he says it, and everyone's, oh, okay. You say it in an NDE, and of course, why is she saying this?
Nut job, right?
Well, I always find that a little baffling. And so, to me, do you get a little baffled by that? I mean, because everybody has sort of predicted the future. And if you read the scriptures, it predicted it eloquently that these are the things on the horizon for us coming down the pike, right? Did you have a question,
Yes,
Dave?
No, but I was going to say that Robert Steele, his approach is it's not supernatural.
Right.
And some people have an aversion to...
And some of it's not supernatural.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Everything's spiritually created before it's physically manifested.
Analysis.
There you go.
Right.
There you go.
Just analyzing what's around you.
Right. So whether you touch a germ by swiping your hand on a dirty bathroom sink or something is spiritually manifested in a different way, everything is spiritually created before it's physically manifested. And
there you go.
For the science geeks out there,
Yeah.
the science, I love it. It's basic science.
One thing is that you don't give time frames in your near-death experience about all the things that you saw us going through, and there are some very, very hard times at hand coming up, right? But you haven't given time frames, but they've
Although some people have tried to say I have.
But you never have. I've never seen you do that, and I talked to you for a lot.
If anybody has a question, they can go to my website and listen to any of the radio shows I've done, the majority of the notes that are posted, and read my books because they could find out exactly what I've said.
When you saw this in your near-death experience, how difficult was that to view in your experience?
Well, every time I've had to write the book, I relive it. And somehow you have to keep it fresh in your mind if you have a certain mission to do, right? And so I have had reminder dreams and visions. And then as things have gotten closer, then more clarity comes because God only gives us what we can handle when we can handle it. So when I first woke up, I was far from having clarity. I had very strong memories and very clear things that have always been there. Mm-hmm. And then more details. It's been extremely difficult. I was joking with you right before this show that about my, some of the threats and things that have been made against me. And I'm wearing my glasses today and I've gained all this weight. And I thought, jokingly, it's a combination of having these visuals of myself hungry and starving in the future and giving my last piece of bread and being like, it's okay, I've got an extra 5 pounds on my belly. Oh, and there's that real psychological side of it. And then the physical side, which is true. But going public with my story has been very stressful. It's been stressful on me and my husband and our family. Fortunately, I'm married to a good man and I have wonderful kids that are very supportive. It's been very hard. Moving,
I'm sure,
twice in a couple of years and doing some things for our own safety and protection and other things as we've been directed. And it's, but it's all part of our preparation too. And so again, I signed up for it and I remember that. I have very clear memories. Some people are going to have a hard time with that. It is what it is. Anybody who's ever had we've all have such supernatural experiences.
I had a dream last night that was crazy. And it's the second time I've had it. And I was down actually on Main Street and I was looking out at the desert and all of a sudden I could see this very dark cloud far away. And it was almost as if something was coming this way and people started running for their homes. And it scared the crap out of me. I woke up and it was like, and and you could go a million ways with that, or it's just happenstance that I had this weird dream. You know what I mean? And I'm kind of open to it all. But do you think the Lavoie incident has rushed things along, or do you think that is not as pivotal as people will think it is, or do you think it's more pivotal than people will think it is?
I think we're right where things are supposed to be.
Okay. All right.
Because there's a lot of ways I could answer that.
Right.
That's a to be continued question.
Okay. Yeah. All right. What do you think, Dave?
We haven't seen the end of Oregon, and there's some people on the inside that are not who they are pretending to be.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, I've got similar feelings. I've got a question. Mm-hmm. Do you find that in my semi-NDE, I rely on that, and it's important to me, but I find that the things that I saw, the colors and the feelings and the love and all, it's diminished over time. You can't get it back. You know it was there, but you're not sensitive to it anymore.
Nothing like when I first woke up.
Does yours increase or decrease over time?
Phase, but there's certain memories because of the nature of what I experienced with essentially like the Book of Life and other things. The sensory, right? We don't just have our 5 or 6 senses. There's like unlimited sensories that we experience, and we just don't recognize it here in mortality. And so the veil's very thin. Sometimes I feel like it's like 1 foot on each side of the veil feeling. But in reference to like the colors and the music, I have memories of it. I actually still have dreams and things of that. And so it's like
comes and goes.
Yeah. But when I woke up, it was so intense. It was one of those things like I remember I got out of the hospital and we're driving home. And of course, my husband was greatly concerned for a lot of reasons. But I remember just looking at like a crow, thinking that was the most beautiful bird. Like, really, a crow?
I did that when I took some oxycodone.
Yeah. One thing I liked about your book, one thing that really resonated with me too, was when you experienced sort of a look at your life. And there were moments in there that were sort of blacked out, right? And there were moments where you realized that even the smallest things, you need to take care of those things while you're on the earth. And I think if there's anything helpful for people right now to understand, and there was a lot of moments of clarity I had when reading your book, but I think one of them is to get your life right and make sure that not only can it bring you happiness in a temporal life, but also because sometimes we sort of just want to forget the little things, and all of us have them.
We all do that. Yeah.
We all do it. And I thought that was neat that you talked about that, because I think people could gain a lot as a great reminder to get your life in order. No matter what happens, we're going to need the strength of that life to be as all it can be. And that if we still have all these things in our past, that can be so, it can take away from the strength that we need right now to get through the things maybe that are ahead.
Right. And wherever we are, right, here in mortality, or we pass on to the other side, or wherever we're destined to go, short term or in the long term, we need to be happy now.
Right.
And if we're happy now, I mean, when we go to the other side, we carry the same strengths and weaknesses and personality traits and emotions and all of that with us. If we have addictions, we still have addictions. We just don't have a body to take care of that cigarette craving. And I witnessed that. I saw that. And it wasn't just witnessing and seeing. It was, I was going back to what Dave was saying about the smells and the music and the visuals of the flowers and colors and things like that. It was as if I was able to sense and feel their thoughts, but also the emotions that went with that. It was heart-wrenching. It still is. And so when I view things coming in the future, it's not just like I'm, even watching a movie. We're talking like a multidimensional virtual reality is the closest thing you can come to try to explain what my experience has been. And so how do we grasp that with our human mind? We don't.
Right.
But we don't have to. And we have to trust God. We have faith.
Right.
Those that don't believe in the higher power and Father in heaven, they can be sarcastic about that. They can make their criticisms and jokes and mocking. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I know that. And I don't care what they say because I know what I know. And those that know that know it as well.
Right.
And the other thing is that the atonement's very real, and it's really not too late. It's not too late.
And you know what I liked about your experience when you were just talking about that repentance was even the littlest things that you think might not have been something big, because people kind of look at the big ones as things, but the littlest thing that you were reminded of, it was like, oh wow, yeah, that you're right. I need to deal with that.
But we're not supposed to nitpick at ourselves. That's a tool of the adversary to beat us up and make us feel we have to be perfectionists. That's not what it's about at all.
But maybe
there
some
really
of the things
God's
that
grace.
plague people a little bit.
Right.
Yeah.
But things like, I need to just trust in the Lord that I came to the earth with what I have been given, what I chose as my life, and do the best with it that I can. And what I've been given is not any. There's no other person on the planet that's been given that, and so we can't judge it. But at the end of the day, when we get to the other side, it's not God saying you're a bad little girl.
Right.
It's I have a perfect recollection of everything I knew and know then, and there will be no question. And I will be my judge.
Interesting.
I like what you said about doing the best with what we've got. One of my biggest worries when we talk about these sort of things, that God's in control, and He's going to handle it, and everything's according to a court of a plan. A lot of people will say, "Okay, well, I'll just let Him handle it," and they just sort of fade out and go back to life. But I think God expects us to be in the fray. Right. He wants us to be part of it. Yeah, because He's the judge. The world's not. It's in His control, but He's judging us, not just judging us, but He's asking us to be a part of it.
Right, and He's not controlling. That's the other guy, but He's in control in that He knows the eternal laws, and He's so many light years ahead. He foresees all of it. He knows us really well, and He gives us an opportunity to learn and grow. It's a blessing that He gives us these opportunities.
And
that's really what
I agree with that. And I think one big thing too that comes out of the book too is you need to prepare. You need to prepare food-wise. You need to prepare for the things that are coming, that you might be living not in your home, that disasters can happen, that might be ramped up. But that at the end of the day, as much as we even prepare, that you must be prepared spiritually for what's about to come. Because I think that you should be able to, how do I put this without sounding weird? There are miracles that can happen. There are things that can happen that would almost have to happen because you almost can't prepare enough for this, and that you need to be just really spiritually in tune. And people aren't working on that as much as they're working on food storage. Right. Food storage is great.
And this is no slam against the prepper community, but I don't consider myself a prepper. I don't really like that term.
But you have prepared.
Because I try to do what is smart, which is to, I've lived through a hurricane and been around a couple volcanoes. I mean, I've just been through some things where even if I didn't have this experience, I pay attention to that stuff. And if even our own government is telling us you should have food and water on hand, and they're not even always looking out for our best interest, what does that tell us we need to kind of put our minds to? But ultimately, at the end of the day, when we run out of that food, we are going to be 100% reliant on God. Yeah. And why not start now?
Yeah. I mean, why not strengthen that now? Right. I think people put a lot of stock into how much food they can actually obtain, but bypassing the whole notion that at the end of the day, I think we're going to be having to rely faith more than anything. I think the pioneers had to do it.
Right.
I think that's a perfect illustration of saying you can only prepare so much, and then they were in the snow and they were in the mountains, and then what? And they relied on faith.
And learning to discern the spirit, discerning spirits on whatever side of the veil they're on. Because here's the thing, and that's part of my mission, and people don't like it when I say my mission. I'm telling you right now, part of my mission is to help sift and to help people learn to discern me, anybody involved with this message, and then it just goes on out from there. How do you discern any kind of truth? Well, we have to practice to figure that out. Sometimes we can't just all of a sudden know how to discern. And things are getting, more and more complicated in many ways. But as the pits have been opened and more darkness is coming, the light also. Ironically, we've got Star Wars that just came out, The Force Awakens. Now, who decided to name it that in Christmas of 15?
Right.
The Force Awakens. And I would, I think, well, what force are we talking about here?
It was funny on family night. I wanted to watch a particular movie with the kids, and my husband said, "No, we need to watch Star Wars." And Star Wars, he goes, "It's very spiritual." That's my husband for you.
You know what? God will connect us in all different ways, right?
I
Some
love
people
that.
They might read my book. Other people at Star Wars. Other people, they come across whatever they need to hear for their life journey, wherever they need to hear it. And I'm not to judge that, but I am to testify of what I know, and that is that I know that God loves us and that we have a very loving older brother who has continued to go to bat for us and has made the ultimate sacrifice, and that the end result is a beautiful, beautiful picture.
I agree.
And it needs to be beautiful today. We don't need to wait around, The whole theme of my first book, and A Greater Tomorrow, and the relief fund that we're doing called the Greater Tomorrow Relief Fund is that, guys, the world's not ending.
Right.
We're transitioning here into a much better state.
Right.
And I'm not talking about the New World Order that people are trying to decide. Okay?
Yeah.
We're talking about the opposite.
Let's hope it doesn't land there.
Right.
Yes.
We're talking about a different way, and the destiny of this planet, which is to receive its paradisical glory, and for the United States to be one of many promised lands, which will become beautiful, beautiful place of good people who love each other and who want to build not only a better America, but a better world, living on a higher vibrational level.
Yeah.
And the Relief Fund, I just want to touch on that quickly because I know we're probably getting short on time. The Greater Tomorrow Relief Fund, you can go to my website at julieroweprepare.com. There's some information there, and then it also links up, or you can just go to greatertomorrowfund.org. And we have gone public with our Relief Fund. This third book, From Tragedy to Destiny, will be released officially on March 1st, although you can pre-order on Amazon. Look for that middle of February. I don't have an exact date on that yet. It goes to press next week.
Okay.
So,
and I will say this, when reading the very first book and the second book too, I did feel very, I would say very impressed, and it brought some clarification to me on maybe some things that in ways will be tested. And that was good. I thought, if anything, you brought up some really valuable ways that we need to think of now and prepare ourselves for those particular tests. And I hadn't thought of that before. So that was something new for me that I got out of the books that I thought, you know what, I hadn't thought of in those ways that we would be tested, and maybe we ought to start thinking about those now. And because you have to decide who you are and what you stand for early on. Dave, did you have a follow-up question? We've got about 20, 30 seconds.
No, I don't.
I
But
have
I'm
something.
just enjoying
Yeah,
the
sure. Go ahead,
conversation.
Julie.
For instance, we're hearing, we've heard in the Ten Commandments for a long time about keeping the Sabbath day holy. Hearing a lot of that. That's important. Those that are not familiar with the stories related to in Scripture about when the Lord preaches his sermon of keeping the Sabbath day holy and what happens after that. So, for instance, look in the book of Jeremiah. Do a little research on that.
That's an important one.
One of his final sermons that he tells his people before he's ready to cleanse an area is to keep the Sabbath day holy. It is, spiritually and temporally speaking, going to save many lives.
Thank you, Julie Rowe, julieroweprepare.com. Thank you, Dave.
Well, thank you, Kate,
Appreciate
for having
you.
me on.
It's a crazy, interesting show, and I appreciate both of you for being here. We had Robert Steele on. I'll put up the SoundCloud. Everybody have a great weekend. We'll see you back here Monday.